Can everybody hear me? Did anybody have any trouble hearing at any point during the first group? No. Okay. I'm going to struggle, I have a feeling. Okay, group 2. 30 seconds to give a biographical sketch of yourself. And we're running a little bit ahead, but I don't want to lose ground. So because we have some thoughts at the end that might be different. So keep to the clock as best you can, and I'll cut you off when you're not. How's that? 30 seconds. Let's start with Jason.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Hyde. I live at 36 Edgewater Drive in Hooksett. I've lived there for about 10 years, actually, this year. My lovely wife, Carrie, is in charge of the Old Home Day Committee and does an excellent job with that, along with raising primarily our 6 kids. I've got 2 kids in high school now. I've got 1 in junior high school, and I've got 3 who aren't even in school yet. I have served on the town council for nearly 3 years, I think it was, 2.5 years. I've been on the budget committee a couple different times.
A couple seconds.
I like doing this. It's fun, and I thank you for your support.
Trish, 30 seconds.
Hi, I've lived in Hooksett for 8 years. I made an extensive search of what community I wanted to have my sons educated in. I have lived in Hooksett since May of 2006, the weekend after the Mother's Day floods. We were supposed to move in that weekend and we lost our driveway. I am SAU educated. I attended Candia schools from 1972 to 1981. I'm a single mom with twin 12-year-old boys. I am currently enrolled at the Southern New Hampshire University in a master's education.
Couple seconds.
Specializing in elementary and special ed, and I'll have my master's degree in the fall of 2015.
Thank you. Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Bollard. I live on 3 Marceau Way. Been a resident of Hooksett for 16 years. My husband and I have 2 boys, 22 and 19. They're both in the Navy. My older son's stationed in Norfolk, and my younger son is in Great Lakes. I have a 7th grader who attends Collie Middle School, and she absolutely loves it and is doing very well. I'm currently employed at a CPA office in Londonderry, and prior to that, I spent 15 years in the
5 seconds.
in the publishing service industry, and I hope you vote for me next week.
Thank you. Jack?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jack Sweeney. I live at 14 Barbary Street in Hooksett. I'm married to Lisa, my wife, who's here tonight, for about 21 years. We have 4 kids. Jessica, 18. She's a freshman at Quinnipiac University. I've got 2 at Collie. Nicole, she's 13 and 8th grader. Ryan is 11 and a 6th grader. And my youngest, Sean, is 8. He's at Hooksett Memorial School. Looking forward to a good night tonight and hope that you guys all get the information you need.
Thank you, Jack. Mike?
My name is Mike Berry. I live 18 Nancy Lane. I've been in Hooksett about 14 years now. Married to my wife Stacy. She's a real estate agent. I have 3 children. Madison is a freshman at Trinity. My daughter Kennedy is a 7th grader at Collie, and my son Braden is a 2nd grader at Underhill. I'm currently on the HYA basketball board. I've coached for the last 10 years my kids' sports, whether it's basketball, baseball, soccer. I am a team player with history working with others, and I look forward to having your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you. I'm a 47-year resident. I've been here since 2. I've been involved for 25 years on many boards, civic organizations, and I would like to return to the school board after previous 12 years to bring a sense of stability, my experience, and my ability to bring people together as a team. So thank you very much, and I love to serve this town, and this is a great place to live.
Thank you, Jim. Everybody ready? Okay, round 1, question 1. Same question as before, but Oh, and I gotta pass these out. Make you wanna pass it down. The question is basically the same. Do you support the Pinkerton Academy contract, which is warrant Article 3? Yes or no? Please explain your response. The difference here is that if you do, please include what measures and expectations will you use to determine the success of this district change? How will you monitor those measures and expectations? And how will you react if those measures and expectations are not satisfied? If you don't support this, please include the following. Identify the alternatives you will discuss at a future school board meeting. Should Hooksett build its own high school? Do you believe in complete and unambiguous freedom of choice without an anchor school? Let's start at the other end. Jim, you're up.
Thank you. I think I would have preferred a somewhat different arrangement. I think we all are pleased with what the education, but I think we would have preferred a different route to get to where we are. But the decision has been made. It's now the opportunity for the voters to decide. Regardless of the outcome, we will have decisions to make. So I will try to bring my 25 years experience to the table. What we need to do, if the contract is successful, is to ensure that the contract is adhered to, the transition is smooth, and we give equal attention to those who currently do not attend Pinkerton. If, on the other hand, it fails, we will have an opportunity to re-engage Pinkerton, renew discussions with Manchester and all other areas, and collectively bringing in the public to come to a resolution that hopefully will meet the expectations of all of us. And I think the other aspect of this, I think we need to start planning, not to say we're going to build, but we need to get to the point, as Todd said, in 1962 we started. But I think the problem is we only get to the building part. What we need to do is prepare for the curriculum, the courses, and so forth, so when Hooksett is ready, maybe 10 years, maybe sooner, we will have a turnkey, and so we'll know what needs to be done, the courses we're going to offer, and the curriculum. So it will be my role as a school board member, whether I'm in favor or not, I will have to give due diligence to the wishes of the voters, and that will be my task. And I think my ability to bring teamwork, as I said, stability and experience to the board, I think we can do it collectively and make everyone, as best as we can, satisfied.
Thank you, Jim. Mike?
Okay, let's see. The first answer, yes or no. I do support the warrant Article 3, the contract with Pinkerton. What measures and expectations are used to determine the success of the district? Yes, the measures and expectations are the state standards that we're all looking at in comparison to Manchester schools that we're coming out of. I think to use as a gauge for the public's feeling of this, you look at this year's 8th grade class, 107 plus or minus kids that are going to be attending Pinkerton next year. Of the 166 8th graders, that's a good snapshot of how the public feels about what Pinkerton has to offer. I think how you monitor these measures and expectations, again, I would look towards state standards to make sure that the school continues to excel, look for ways to improve beyond what they're already doing. And I think injecting Hooksett into that school system is only going to boost those scores. How you react to those measures and expectations, beautiful part about Pinkerton and us going there is that they allow us to have 2 seats on their board, so we have a direct impact on how their performance is, and we can have a say in if they're not meeting state standards or what things are lacking, which ways we can improve.
Thank you. Jack?
So I wish I had more than 2 minutes, though I don't typically like to talk a lot. Yes, I do support Pinkerton and the warrant article number 3 for a number of reasons. But let me answer these direct questions. The measures and expectations are really the measures and expectations that we have as a community for the education of our kids. And those we have formulated, and others it's from the input that we get from parents. In terms of monitoring those measures and expectations, and this is where I think we have an advantage now going forward that we didn't have necessarily with Manchester is the level of collaboration that Pinkerton provides us. There are regularly scheduled meetings with not only the principals, but the superintendent or the headmaster, as well as all the department heads. And that collaboration is going to allow us to monitor those expectations. How we react if they are not being met, again, it's a very collaborative process that Pinkerton has demonstrated with other sending towns that we will see with us as well. And we'll measure that not only through the state standards and the testing that our kids will take, but also input that we get back from the parents, as well as report cards that the superintendent gets from Pinkerton that currently I believe he does not get from Manchester. So we're going to have objective standards by which to measure them. I will say that, since he hasn't stood up yet, that this isn't a question of if you vote yes, you get Pinkerton, and if you vote no, you get choice. And I think that's important that that's understood. It says if you don't, do you believe in complete and unambiguous freedom of choice? That is an impossible standard to meet. If you vote no, it is not a case where we are going to have freedom of choice for our kids. It's not possible. The accepting schools have limits on the amount of kids they can take. If we vote no to Pinkerton, we are going to have to come together as a board for sure. And if that's the will of the people, then we're going to have to deal with that. But I want to make sure that people understand this isn't a case of yes, we have Pinkerton, and no, we have choice, because that's just not
Seconds.
how perfect. I timed that perfect.
Amy?
Do you support Pinkerton contract? I'm voting no. The reason I'm voting no is I don't see that we have enough history with Pinkerton as a school. Last year's 8th grade class overwhelmingly chose Londonderry. They chose it because it was affordable. They chose it because they could figure out a way to get to the school. This year, our 8th grade class chose Pinkerton. If I saw that the 8th graders last year chose Pinkerton and the 8th graders this year chose Pinkerton, and we had a number of kids in the system, we'd have something to measure. We'd have something to see. The kids that did go to Londonderry were overwhelmingly high-flying Hawks. Those were the kinds of kids that would do well no matter where they went. This year we have 108 that have chosen Pinkerton. Next year we'll get some good analysis as to how they're doing. One thing you have to remember is Pinkerton is still a public high school. It's not a private school. There's issues and things with kids and class selections that sound great when you're going to the tour, but it's the everyday life. It's the going to school every day. The other thing that concerns me is we do not share an economy with Derry. Hooksett shops in Hooksett. We shop in Manchester. Manchester, we're just not close enough to share an economy. Once our kids are enrolled in Pinkerton, they're going to broaden their horizons, as all high school students do. You have kids from Hampstead, you have kids from Chester, you have kids from Auburn. Your kids are going to want to go to those towns. They're going to want to go hang out in those locations. As a parent, it's a little harder to corral that because you won't have a choice. As far as should Hooksett build its own high school, I think that's the will of the town. If our town feels that that's a good thing and this is the right time, I would support it. Obviously, it would impact our tax base, but I think the benefits would be better home values.
5 seconds.
As far as unlimited school choice, no, I think eventually Pandora's box will close. We have 4 years
Thank
with
you, Amy.
Manchester.
Tricia?
Hi, do I support a Pinkerton Academy contract? Yes, I do. What measures and expectations will we use to determine the success? Unlike our current relationship with Manchester, Pinkerton provides semester grades to the superintendent, class rank, post-Pinkerton placement, so when you graduate, we know where you went. We've always heard people would like that data. We have never received it. The thing that has become very clear to me in my interactions with Pinkerton Academy is they want to be our partner. They don't want to just educate our kids, they want to be our partner. They provide, the board gets together twice a year with the headmaster, the superintendents get together 3 times a year. Guidance and teachers meet to access and align curriculum, bridge gaps. If we see there's a huge problem in our freshman algebra class, it gets adjusted for those kids at Pinkerton, and then they talk to colleague to make sure that the kids that are going to algebra are getting what they need there. Building a high school, because I've run out of time, I'm going to answer one at the bottom. Building our own high school. From 2006 to 2009, I sat on a committee that studied that. We looked at curriculum. We looked at everything. The one question after the survey the voters had is, what does it cost? $55 million, and building aid to help build the high school does not exist in this state, and it's not going to exist for a while. Our state has tough decisions to make, and building a high school is not a realistic expectation for us, but our students deserve a quality state, a quality education. We give them the Cadillac, and then when they leave, they deserve to stay in a Cadillac of education. And that just is not what Manchester is capable of giving us right now.
5 seconds.
Could they fix it in the future? Absolutely, but it isn't what exists now. They have a tax cap,
Thank
they
you,
have
Tricia.
serious problems in their community.
Jason?
All right, no, I do not support warrant Article 3. Do not mistake that to mean that I don't support people's right to choose to go to Pinkerton if that's what they feel is what's best for their children. Of course I support that. I don't react well when I hear the words, "that is impossible." My parents raised me to believe that anything is possible if you set your mind to it. That was something my father drove into me and something I try to drive into my own kids. I think anything is possible when we put our minds to it. You come up with a plan that allows people to choose where they want to go, and we will pay for it as a community. Because in the long run, that is what is going to help us be successful as a community, as a state, and as a country. If you force kids to do something they don't want to do, you force parents to send their kids somewhere they don't want to send them, the chances of failure are far greater than if you had given them the choice of what they wanted to do and where they wanted to go. Should Hooksett build its own high school? Maybe. I think it would be a better alternative than shipping $50+ million out of town. I believe that we would have better control over what happens as opposed to the kind of control we're going to get over at Pinkerton. Limited control that we'll get over at Pinkerton. Do I believe in complete and unambiguous freedom? Yes, I do. Equal opportunity does not mean equal outcome. That's an important statement to remember. Someone earlier mentioned equal opportunity. Equal opportunity means every kid ought to have the equal opportunity to go wherever they want to go so that they can be successful later in life. I think that's about it.
Thank you. Time.
This is more.
Everybody comfortable? Okay. Question 2. Same question. Do you support the formation of a committee to examine whether the Hooksett School District remains in SAU 15, which is Article 9? Please explain. By including why, if this study committee is approved, what criteria will you use to select committee members? What are the objectives in your mind the committee should receive from the school board? And how will you evaluate the committee's conclusions and recommendations? Jim, you had the first one, so Mike?
Thank you. I do not support Article 9 in creating the committee to examine whether or not we should remain in SAU 15. The reason why is there isn't a clear definitive reason as to why we're looking to do this. Hasn't been laid out too well. I don't know if it's for control, for money savings. I guess for me, I don't see the reason for it. I think we have a good sounding board, a good group of additional communities that we look to for assistance. So I think having the SAU as it is a good thing, especially in times like this. We've got Dr. Littlefield is a great individual, along with the administration that we have. So I wouldn't want to jeopardize any of that. I guess if the study committee is approved, what criteria to use to select committee members? I would look for obviously volunteers, people that wanted to partake in being part of that committee, those folks that have unbiased opinions that can offer some benefit and have constructive input. The objectives, I guess, would, again, trying to understand what the benefits are of separating from the SAU 15. That would be my number one objective, what the reason is. And the conclusion that they should come to is, I guess, give a definitive answer as to why it's a benefit to break free from SAU 15. Again, not truly understanding what the reason is, because it was just put on there by 25 people that wanted it on the warrant article. It's tough to understand why. Again, I think we have a good SAU, a good group of people, so I would like to continue with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Jack?
So I'm not as analytical as Todd by any stretch of the imagination, but to me, data is always better than no data. In this case, I happen to agree with Mike that I don't understand the reason for it. No one has come up with a reason why we would look to do this. I don't necessarily have a problem with it. My concern is the objectivity of the people that are going to be on the committee, which really speaks to you know, what criteria we use to select committee members. If we're doing it because we want to see what's in the best interest of the town, I don't think gathering data is necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that there is a concrete reason at this point why we would want to leave the SAU or dismantle it. We've tried it in the past, it hasn't worked, or there was no reason for it, the state didn't approve it. And I think that Dr. Littlefield does a fantastic job. That said, you know, I'm going to vote no because I don't think it's the right time. I haven't seen enough information that makes sense as to why we would do it. And the end result of a committee report, you know, may cause unintended consequences that aren't being thought of now. And if without a clear reason as to why we're doing it, if it's because we think we can save money, because we think we can be more efficient or provide better educational opportunities, lacking that, you know, I just think the slippery slope doesn't make sense right now. So one of the objectives, without knowing why we're doing this in the first place, I could venture to guess what some objectives might be, financial objectives or educational objectives. I'd evaluate the committee's conclusions based on their objectivity, based on the facts that they brought back to the school board that helped us make a decision that was in the best interest of the town.
Thank you, Jack. Amy?
I do support Article 9. I would like to see what a committee came up with for how our SAU is doing business now, what we could gain if we were our own SAU. I'm thinking we may stand a chance of gaining just time. Our current SAU, they're stretched with the amount of meetings they have to attend, the 3 districts they have to oversee. Would a concentrated Hooksett school SAU give Hooksett more energy, more boost? If the study committee was approved, what criteria would I use? I would be looking for objective people, you know, a nice mix of people that were, you know, very supportive of staying and supportive of looking at leaving. I think you'd have a board member or 2, and possibly somebody from the SAU office that would also help. As far as evaluating the committee's conclusions, I think as a town you'd be looking for, was there actually cost savings or was there actually time gained? And you'd have to weigh that situation. Is the time gained more communication with our town, maybe more oversight on our high school issues might be beneficial. So I do support Article 9.
Thank you, Amy. Tricia?
No, I do not support Article 9. We have done this unsuccessfully twice before. The last time we failed because the cost of the other towns was not addressed by the committee. With the Common Core, in our second year, next year will be our second year of full implementation. All 3 communities have a lot of work to do, and we benefit from collaboration. We pay 60% of 80 people's salary. We would pay 100% of 6 people's salary. And the reason that is that is the average size of SAUs in this town, whether they are single. If they are a single district, they have 8 employees. We would still pay for the remainder of the contract of any contracted employee in the current SAU. We would pay 60% of their salary until their contract expires. That's why I don't support it. If this study committee was approved, how would you, what would your criteria be? I think we would accept letters of interest and want fair-minded people on both sides, in favor and opposed. Typically, it is 2 board members who sit on a committee such as this. What are the objectives? The educational impact on our students. How does this benefit our educational system as it currently exists? It is my understanding that an SAU withdrawal committee actually needs to meet the expectations of the State Department of Education for approval for separation, and that's where it has failed both times in the past. Once we get to the DOE, they give us certain criteria, what they want to see from us. Both times we haven't given them what they wanted, and it's been the cost to the other 2 communities who pay 40% of the SAU. They would then pay 100%. That's the obstacle when you get to the DOE. And this just has a huge cost. In the future, if the economy was better, might it be a good idea? Might be a good idea. But we need to focus on education and not more administrative staff. We have a wonderful staff right now.
Thank you, Tricia. Jason?
Thank you. So, yes, I do support Article 9. I kind of echo what other people have said. Data is always good. The more knowledge I have in my head, the more informed decision I can make. As far as the people that you would put on it, obviously there'd be a couple board members, and there'd be people from both sides. You've heard this before. That's how these things sort of work. You need objective opinions from both sides of things so that you can make an educated and informed decision on stuff. The objectives, I'd want to hear them laying out costs. I'd want to have a timeline. I'd want to have leadership structures, all these sorts of things that would come along with that plan. You need to have that in place before you make the decision, otherwise you're kind of flying blind, and that's never a good idea. And how would I evaluate the committee's conclusions? Just base it on the data, and then you're going to have to make a gut call whether or not you think it's going to be better for our school district to have more local control and to have less possible conflicts with other school districts, less splitting of the time of your staff. Your staff would then be dedicated to you. It would give you an opportunity to raise your own leadership structure from within your own administration, rather than having to go outside of that. More of a private business model, right? You hire from within, that kind of thing. So it'll all be data-driven. That's how you have to make the conclusions.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you. I have a unique position because I was on the school boards the last 2 times the district decided to look at studying withdrawal. So I have an interesting perspective of being involved in the discussions and the presentations from the boards and so forth. Is it worth looking at? Certainly. I think, as Mrs. McHugh said, maybe the timing now is not right. But certainly looking at it, and would they come back with different information and facts and figures from previous committees? I'm not sure. But clearly the objectives of an SAU, the state requires certain things to be in an administrative unit. Superintendent, business director. Beyond that, it's kind of up to the board. So we could have a superintendent and a business manager. We wouldn't need the other additional items. I think the objectives should be what is set forth by the requirements, what we need to have in an SAU. Certainly, the committee should be made up of similar to what the people want in a school board. People willing to work together, bring in information and facts, and discuss in a thoughtful and civil manner. So I think that's what we need to do, people who are unbiased, who come looking at the figures and present a clear information and report back to the authorities. The evaluation really comes back to the state board approving this contract. What role the school board has, I think in the past, I voted to abstain from voting whether we should vote to remove ourselves from the SAU or not. So clearly, the timing, I don't think is right. To me, I think the time to have an SAU, as I refer to that, is if we ever have high school. Clearly, that would be the best time to look at having our own superintendent. Beyond that, I think the timing is not right, and I'm inclined to vote no. But if it passes,
5
I'll
seconds.
do the best I can to make sure the wishes of the people are agreed to.
Thank you, Jim. Did everybody answer that one? I think so. I lost track right in the middle of this round, and Okay, next question, and Mike's gonna lead us off.
Second time, it's Jack's turn.
You're right.
I just want to be fair.
I'm sorry, Mike. And thank you all for correcting that. I was just testing you, actually. Explain how you will set aside your personal objectives and work collectively and civilly with 6 other board members to develop solutions to any district issues that may be contrary to your personal desired outcome, and refrain from undermining, either officially or unofficially, the same after the vote. Please address the following with your response. How should the board manage actions and behavior which get in the way of reasonable debate, closure to issues, and completion of established agendas? And should your newly elected school board become dysfunctional, how will you work to undysfunction and move forward in the interest of all stakeholders? There's one word that was created in there. I hope you picked it up. Everybody got the question? Everybody have a paper copy of it?
Yes.
Okay, Jack?
All right, so I think part of being on a board and part of coming up with policies or moving forward with a particular direction, debate is a good part of that. It's an important part of that, and getting to opposing views is an important part of that. And you can't expect to always win your argument. You place your argument, you know, you win or lose, but then you have to rally behind whatever the board does, and you have to move forward with that. I think it's a huge problem that we're facing now, is that that isn't happening. It's something that I've had to do in business. It's something I did as president of football and cheer. I was president of football and cheer. You have football and cheer with 2 different viewpoints of what the organization should be. As president, you have to, you know, you have your opinions. At the end of the day, you need to rally around what the board decides, and you have to move forward with that. In terms of how the board should manage actions and behavior, someone said it earlier, but you can't manage civility too well. I think having Robert's rules and having a set of rules that govern meetings is an important way to do that. I caution, because I think we've seen it this year as well, that when policy or procedure becomes more important than policy, I think you run into a little bit of trouble. So I think it's something that has to be managed there. But having reasonable debate is about having rules that govern that debate. Should a newly elected school board become dysfunctional, how would you work to undysfunction? I think that comes down to having reasonable people that can disagree, but that can, you know, sit down and talk things through as adults and understand that, you know, and I talked about this earlier with someone, a resident out there. I believe that everyone in this room has the best interests of the kids at heart. I think everybody does, and I think there's more that we agree on than what we disagree on. And I think it's coming to that consensus that helps drive reasonable people and reasonable debate, understanding that we all have the same goals in mind. We might disagree on how we get there, but those things have to be, you know, debated, discussed, and then.
5 seconds, Jack.
I'm done. See that?
Me?
I think by and large, most people want to be civil. I think part of the way you get off track is by not having that plan to begin with. Joanne had mentioned in the earlier debate the retreat where the board members got together and they designed a strategy for the year. If everyone comes to the table and agrees to the strategy, agrees to the vision and the goals of the town and the schools, it's easier to flow through the meetings. It's easier to be civil. You know what your goal is, and you know what the objectives are. As far as when behavior gets in the way, you know, sometimes maybe the board needs to take a step back, whether it be individual board members or the board as a whole. It's probably better to address it before it becomes too large. I mean, once it becomes too large, it's very difficult to bring all the members back in. I think this year having 7 members, I think will create a better working environment. It won't be just a small group. And as far as dysfunctional, again, it is about the kids. Everyone at the table needs to remember that. You know, would you want your children sitting in that audience? You know, if you think of that, it's very easy to be civil.
Thank you, Amy. Tricia?
It's a tough one. How would I put aside my personal objectives if the board, after the vote on November 19th, the Hooksett School Board took a vote. It was 4-1 to stop negotiations with Pinkerton. I was the chair, and I was the one vote. For a very long time, everyone thought it was a unanimous vote, because when I was asked by the press, I gave the opinion of the will of the Hooksett School Board. It wasn't until we were about a month in that I said, that wasn't a unanimous vote, it was 4-1. And everyone goes, who voted in the 1? I said, I did. I thought it was too soon. That's how I would put it aside. It's the will of the board. That's what you go forward for. Once you leave the boardroom, it's what the board decided to do. How would you manage actions and behaviors which get in the way of reasonable debate? I would do what I did. As a Hooksett School Board Chair, I was 1.5 years into my term. When I got to the New Hampshire School Board Association meeting for chairs, they were shocked that I was the chair. Most chairs sit on the board for 2 to 3 terms before they're the chair. I listened to chairs from other communities. I asked advice. I sat at meetings and said, I'm new at this and I need help. And I asked people in the community, what would you do? How would you handle this? Where do I go to get information? What do I read? I asked everyone. I asked people that I knew had been chairs in the past. I emailed people who were chairs in the past. I met with people who had sat on boards, varied boards, not just school boards, town council, budget committee. I asked them, how do you handle being the chair? There's something people say when I go, we're taking a recess. They go, where does she go? I usually go to the bathroom and I collect myself. I try not to let my emotions get away from me. I am very passionate about education. In my time on the
5 seconds, Trish.
School Board, I have found what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I am very passionate about kids. And that's what I do. Thank you.
Jason?
Okay, so explain how I'll set aside personal objectives and work collectively and civilly with 6 other board members. I've done it in the past on the budget committee. I was often the one guy who didn't vote for a budget and whatnot. Same thing on the town council. I was often the one guy that didn't vote for one particular thing or another. But when you're in that position, like when you're on a work group in whatever business you happen to be in, when you're interacting with levels of management and in corporate entities and all that, you have to be able to set aside what you think personally. And you don't always have to support what the board said, but you can't try to sabotage it. That's not the right way to do things. It's just not what we do in America, frankly. You might not agree with something, but that doesn't mean you have the right to try to destroy it if that's what the majority wants. I don't do that. I might disagree with people pretty fervently, but I'm not going to try to destroy what a majority of any board has tried to accomplish, whether I agree with it or not. It's just not how I operate. I guess what I'm saying is I know how to drink the Kool-Aid, because I work for a very big company, and I have to drink the Kool-Aid every day because I'm a member of management, and I get told goals that I have to push out to guys that I don't necessarily agree with, but I have to toe the line. That's just what you do. How should the board manage actions which get in the way of reasonable debate, etc.? Robert's rules are extremely important. They have been in place around the world for hundreds of years to make boards like this function properly. They work. They not completely eliminate, but they help control the personalities.
5 seconds, Jason.
A strong chair is extremely important as well. Someone who knows how to control a room and a meeting properly.
Thank you, Jason. Jim?
Thank you. For 25 years, I've come to the table prepared, willing to debate, and make my case. I think I've been civil and ready to work as a team. There are some times my job is to debate the issues at the time, and if the vote fails to go the way I think, it is my job to do my best to support. There was one time back in the 90s, a more peaceful time in town, that I voted no for the town budget. And it was my job as the budget committee rep to defend that budget. And I did it with all my vigor and my 100% things. And I did it convincingly because that's my job, is to work together as a team. The best way to the board to work is for the board to have an understanding of the processes and develop, I think, rules of procedure that they should adhere to, not just Robert's rules, but an understanding. And I think the first thing this board needs to do is get together so we all understand what our role is, there are responsibilities, and the way things are going to proceed handling the agendas. Hopefully, dysfunction will go away. Nothing's worse than going to a meeting when you see people arguing and being somewhat childish, and maybe childish is not the good word for it, but you need to look at the board that they are following the procedures, they're adhering to the rules.
5 seconds, Jim.
The key is to follow the procedures that the board has established.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike.
Mike, now it's your turn.
I think as a member of the school board, you're naturally going to have debate, objections, discussions. I think that's healthy. That leads you to a good decision on different things that come up. But you have to remember you are a member of the board and you have to portray a unified front, and that I think this town needs to get back to gaining that credibility and stability that we once had in our school board. I myself, a team player, a history of working well with others. In sales, you have to be a good listener. You have to be a problem solver. You have to learn as you go and adapt. You can't just walk into a meeting with your set on what you want the outcome to be, and that's it. You're going to lose the sale every time. So I think being able to adapt and work, be a good team player, that's how you work through this. And if what you want doesn't happen, then you work with the board and you continue on. Again, the ways to manage it, I think everybody says it. Robert's Rules is a good way to, it creates discussion and flow. It kind of mandates how the meetings run. If everybody knows kind of how it's set up, and if there's no varying from that, you can get through the agenda. Again, it's setting an agenda that's realistic and achievable. I think you have to kind of limit. If you've got too many things on there, realistically you're not going to get through it, then what's the point in putting it on the agenda? Should it become dysfunctional? I guess similar to what other people are saying, maybe retreat might be in order to get people on the same board, kind of bury the hatchet. Have closed meetings if need be, but it's not something that you want to keep airing your dirty laundry twice a month in front of the public. I think people need to remember the code of ethics, which is honesty, trust, fairness, and integrity. And if the board members have that, then we'll be in good standings.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you all. I think you handled some of those questions pretty well. Okay, now for the fun. Not you, Amy. Sometimes two stick together. Yeah, I think we've seen that before. Whoa. Okay, Amy, the superintendent resigns the evening before the next school board meeting. In your opinion, what are the next 3 steps the board must address?
Obviously you have to address notifying the state, notifying the administration, notifying the remaining SAU partners. And then you have to collectively get together and plan the next steps, whether it be someone at the current SAU office coming up as an interim, or starting a search. Hopefully he did it or she did it at the end of the school year, so it gives you a couple of months to regroup. But I think in general, the school system and the SAUs will soldier on.
Thank you.
Question 8.
I'm going to stay out here because I'm getting tired of going back in between that podium and the tables. And I need my glasses. My wife knows that drill. Always searching around the house for my glasses. Thank you, Heather. I don't need this. The school district fiscal year extends from July 1 to June 30, and it is now June 15th, and the board is meeting. During the meeting, the superintendent reports that everything went well, the financial performance is exceptional, and $500,000 is unspent and unencumbered. There is discussion by board members and the superintendent about spending most of that money for some exciting new technology that was not available when the budget was prepared, but would greatly improve the environment of all classrooms. What is your input to that discussion, and how would you vote if a motion was made to spend money?
Well, I get to speak to that from real experience because that happened to me. I was elected in March of 2011, and in May of 2011, that exact scenario happened. And I did vote to expend the money on the new technology. Hindsight being 2020, I may not have made the same decision as I became a more experienced board member and got a better understanding of what fund balance spending was and what it was for. What was presented at the time seemed like a great idea, and that is why I voted for it. Because in our current educational system, and this is across our country, that our students are different than we are. Their brains are different than ours, and because they are what is called a digital native, which means their first language is digital. It's not speaking. And this is established by Ian Jukes. It's a very well-researched subject. And this new technology excites kids. When you give a child a piece of technology and you have them learn the same thing, they understand it better because you remember 72% of what you see visually as opposed to data being lectured to you. 72% retention 3 years later is huge. And I had begun to learn these things because I was exploring getting into education, and that's why I voted the way I did. In hindsight, I probably would have only done, in future years, we have never voted again on fund balance spending, but if it was an emergency in the future, I would vote that way. I would not vote for a technology purpose because I have a better understanding of fund balance spending at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to change tactics a little bit here and leave these questions out so that we try to get no more duplication. And probably get through most of these. Jason.
Number 11.
What is the role of the school board? And how will you tap the knowledge, expertise, and opinions of your constituents to better discharge those responsibilities?
Role of the school board is similar to, I think Todd had described it earlier, I kind of look at it the same way. It's a board of directors, and you hire the administrators to run the day-to-day. It's kind of like the town council as well. School board sets policy, but they don't interfere with the interworkings of how the administration does their job. The way you, how did it word that? You tap the knowledge, the expertise, and opinions of the people that are on the board. They're your fellow citizens. And the beautiful thing about boards like this is it allows you to gain the experience. You never know what somebody else does for work, right? You never know what they do for fun. You never know how they interact, what they read, etc. You ask a lot of questions, you get to those answers. And you'll often find that people in the audience, when they give you public input, and people on the boards themselves, might have a different way of doing things that we could then perhaps suggest to the administration that they might want to try doing it that way. Because it may save us money, it may be more efficient, it may help the education of the kids, etc. So you ask a lot of questions, and you listen to what everybody says, and you take it in, you process it with your own experiences, and you use that to make a decision.
Thank you. Number 7. Pick another number. We beat this one to death.
Number 10.
Probably beat this one to death too.
You're gonna get them all.
Oh, good, 13.
13.
13, Heather. Okay, what are the ingredients of a successful school district? And does Hooksett have those ingredients?
Hooksett does have the ingredients. We have a family of citizens who want their kids to succeed. We have a history of supporting education as long as I've been here. There's been things that we've needed that we hope to have, and the town has supported it. But the key to that is that the board has presented clearly the facts. Sometimes things don't work out the first time, but we take the advice of the voters and relook at things. We have the ingredients because we have outstanding teachers. We have teachers who still are teaching, and they taught me in 3rd grade that one of them is retiring this year. So we have a longevity in who can foster the new student teachers who come. So the same great teacher I had when I was in 3rd grade, 1973, is still teaching, and they're giving their full devotion. And we have administrative staff, support staff, that truly form a wonderful Hooksett family. Do we have the ingredients? Yes. Can we do better? Yes, but the only way we can do better
Five
is
seconds,
work
Jim.
together. And that's what we need, work together as one family.
Thank you. Okay, Mike.
I-25. I-25.
Bingo.
Giving them a peek at all the questions. Priority issues, excluding high school. What in your mind, Mike, are the three most important or highest priority educational issues facing the Hooksett School District? Your response should recognize that the Hooksett School District includes students, administration and staff, parents, residents, and voters, along with all the physical school facilities and transportation assets, as well as the ever-present environment of dwindling financial resources clashing with upward cost pressures. I don't know if that sentence is grammatically correct, but including your response, new initiatives, which may be in your top three, student needs and improvements needed to meet those needs, and educational issues or needs for the next 10 years.
Did you want my question?
That's an easy question.
I feel like I've already answered it. The issues. I think obviously one of the main issues is getting the Hooksett School Board back on track and focusing on education. And we're in the process of trying to correct that now by electing 5 new members, 5 members to expand the board to 7. I think that'll create a nice healthy flow of discussion. Let's see. Probably the other issue is budgets. It's always an issue. Limiting additional expenses, looking for ways to cut if possible without impacting the students in education. That's always a tough one. And then I guess probably the other thing would be as a member of the school board, our job is to always try and raise the bar, look for ways to, I guess, improve our standards and where we are in relation to the state using Common Core, or where do we rank? How can we look at ways to improve? Is there technology that we need to invest in? Is there a different learning system that we should try to adopt? Those, I think, are the 3 main issues that we should be focusing on as a school board. Obviously, always number 1 is education, but we can't get to that point until we get stability to this board.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's a pretty good answer for a question that's hard to read.
I heard that, Joanne.
I'm editorialized.
4.
I was trying to figure out what you went and said.
She dissed me. Code of conduct. If a majority of the board votes in the affirmative for any issue and you are in the minority, what is your responsibility as a board member? I think we've touched on this in the general questions, but I'm getting at another issue here. How will you discharge the responsibility you just described as an elected official outside of official meetings where the results of a pervasive social media environment are often in conflict with the public's statutory right to know? And how will you conduct yourself? What is your responsibility, not only outside, but at subsequent school board meetings?
Sure, I think, the key is that once the decision is made, whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, that as a school board member, you're a part of the group that agrees to it. And that's what I would do. I think that's the responsibility you have as a school board member. I think the best way to deal with social media is not to engage and that would be my policy. I just wouldn't engage in that. Outside of any social media and individual discussions I may have, I think it's important not to talk about it. The time that you're giving your dissent or the time that you're giving your other opinion is while you're in the public session and you're discussing whatever it is that the issue that you're dealing with. So, you know, it's part of being on a school board that has to make decisions, or any type of board that has to make decisions. I think the responsibility is that you make your case, you make it as passionately as you feel necessary, and then, you know, win or lose, you support the decision of the board, and that's how you go forward. It doesn't do anybody any good to constantly bring up the fact that you lost and that you were right, and there's nothing productive that comes from that, and it really shouldn't happen. So that's, I don't know if that's fully answering that question, but that's my answer.
Thank you.
Oh, it says at subsequent meetings. I hope I answered that part. I don't want to leave an answer out, but
Okay.
at subsequent, same thing.
We're in Article 3. This article fails. What would you do next? What would you do next, recognizing that the budget for 2014-2015 contains provisions to implement the content of Article 3 for 1 year?
Okay. We've already committed to our parents. We've already committed to our kids. The kids that are going to be going to Pinkerton need our support. I would be voting for continuation of what was voted on for those kids from the previous board, meaning I would support the bus and I would support the tuition for that year. It would also give our school board a chance to, again, see how the kids are doing. Before we had to step up to make another vote for high school. Technically, we have until 2018 with Manchester. There's no reason why we can't take a year or two to see how things work in Pinkerton. And when we approach our next contract with Manchester sometime around 2016, you look at both options. It would be much easier to vote for a school if all our kids were already going there. If things aren't working out well, it would be a shame to shut the door on Manchester. So again, I would support the students that are going to Pinkerton, as well as the students that are already enrolled in Bow and Pembroke and Londonderry.
Thank you. Resource allocation. If state and federal resources for education continue to dwindle, much greater pressure will be exerted on the Hooksett School District budget. In that case, what are your targets for reducing expenditures to close the budget gaps created by the state and federal downshifting?
I think one thing that as part of SAU 15 that we could all do is work collaboratively to see if there are resources that we can combine between the three districts. I think that we should utilize the resources of the people who are employed at the SAU, that being the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the business administrator, to find ways to do what we do collaboratively, taking advantage of services that are offered at Ceresc, which don't ask me for what that acronym means, but it's a board of administrators from communities that work together to provide services to each other. I think one of the things that is not extremely well known in the community is that Marge Pollock is an amazing grant writer, and I think that she should be encouraged to do that as much as possible, and as funds dwindle, that might be something that we need to do more than we currently do. I do know that at one point in time, the SAU staff was actually 9 people, and it was reduced to 8. Somewhere between 2006 and 2008, due to the economy, the superintendent wanted to reduce the budget. Someone was leaving and he didn't replace them. Maybe if an additional person was at the SAU, that might free up time for someone to research that even more, because you often hear of other communities that have a great deal of money that they've received in grants. Just to our north in Allenstown and Pembroke, every 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grader has a laptop at school. It's on a cart, they pick it up in the morning, they drop it off. In every classroom, the teacher wears a microphone that amplifies her voice, so no children can say, I didn't hear you.
5 seconds, Tricia.
I think that is something that we should look into extensively as grants.
Thank you.
Number 5.
School board relationships. Understanding that school board members have authority for school issues in the broadest context only as a board and not as individuals, please discuss the following. The relationship of the school board and the superintendent. The relationship of the school board and school and district staff. And what is the role of the superintendent as an unelected public official?
So we kind of danced around this in various different ways earlier. Relationship with the school board and the superintendent, I stated it earlier, the school board is an advisory board. We give policy, the superintendent's job is to implement it. The relationship of the school board to the school district staff, a little bit different. Any communication to the staff of the schools should go through the superintendent. Any communication this board wants to make to the staff should go through the superintendent. That's his job, not our job. And the role of the superintendent as an unelected public official, again, it's his job with his experience, or her, I should say, whoever that happens to be. I apologize for that. Whoever the superintendent happens to be, it's their job to help advise us when they can, for the school board members to make a more informed decision on things. And it's also their job to carry out the will of the school board, whatever that may be.
Is that it? Well, don't look so strange.
I get 3 questions? Oh. I thought
6.
Discuss the actions you would take to reestablish trust and confidence between Hooksit's residents, school board, administration, and staff when it has been shattered.
Thank you. I think I would continue to take the approach I've been taking for many years. I don't want to keep repeating this, but I mean, I come to boards being prepared, attending meetings many times. And last year I've attended about 85% of the school board meetings, standing for 4 hours, but watching. But I think what we need to do is promote proper behavior, be leaders, where the children, to quote a saying, children listen, be careful of the things you say. Well, they are listening, and we need to set the example. We need to be afraid, be above the fray. We need to adhere to rules that we establish, work together, be civil. But I think what we need to do is take a new approach to critique the past years to see how we can improve on that. And I think my contribution to the council, which I still serve on, I think we collaboratively work together to fix the issues that existed on the council before by making sure we follow the rules and we're careful in how we approach things. But I think you need to set the example, be above the fray, and be the adults and work together. So I think our actions can renew stability and trust into the board, because we don't need any more headlines appearing that put a dark spell on the town. There's too much good stuff going. Yes, there are going to be bumps in the road, and we have bumps in the road on many boards, but I think we've worked together, persevered, and we come out good at the end. And as I said, we can't do that alone. I'm only one board. The success of the board is not just because of the chair. The chair does take a good role on it, but the success of the board is the success of each 7 of us, or each 5 of us,
5 seconds, Jim.
committing. I think our actions speak volumes.
Thank you, Jim. Where did I start this last question?
You started with me twice.
With you.
I did.
Yeah.
So you've had
2 questions in this round.
Okay, and Jack, you've had 1? Okay.
This gets confusing, and I got the easiest job. Number 1. Common Core. Describe your understanding of Common Core. Do you agree with this initiative? And explain your answer. Secondly, do you support New Hampshire House Bill 1508, which deletes, which as I understand it, deletes the Common Core requirements for New Hampshire?
Yes, I agree with the initiative Common Core. I think it gives, sets a bar, a standard for schools to achieve and determine how they rank, whether it's statewide, nationwide. I think without that, you don't have anything to gauge yourself on. Just like a student, if you didn't actually give them a grade, how do they know if they're actually doing well? So I think it's important that states have a gauge to determine where they need to improve. I know it has to do with mathematics, I know it has to do with reading, writing, and I think it's important. If there is a House bill to do away with it, I guess I would want to know what the thought process is to replace it, or if there's some other idea that they have so that you can have some sort of performance criteria. Again, in sales, I'm held to numbers. That's how you're ranked on how you're doing performance-wise. And if you don't have that, I don't understand how you would gauge where you can improve, what things you can do differently, what things aren't working. So I think it is important. Unless there's something else out there that is better, then I would be open to hearing about it.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, 2 left, you get 1 of them.
14.
14.
Special ed. How will you evaluate the effectiveness of the delivery of special education?
I'm not an expert on this particular topic, but I think it's how you gauge the effectiveness of any program is understanding what the goals and objectives are of that program, getting together with the people that are implementing and that are administrating that program, get together with certainly the parents, because I know with special education, parental involvement is very important in making sure that parental goals are aligned with what's being delivered as part of the program. I'm not an expert in how we would go about tactically measuring those objectives. I'm sure the state has got some input into this. I think it's important that we're aligned with the state, but I really think that the program and the service that we're providing is aligned with what the parents' expectations are, as well as what the curriculum and the education requirements are of that particular student.
Thank you. How are we doing so far?
Good.
All right, last roundup. All right, each of you will have a chance to just freewheel it. whatever's on your mind that you think is important for the voters to know. We would like you to include 2 parts. And those 2 parts are your future involvement if you are not elected, and how will your constituents trust that you will discharge your responsibilities as you have responded this evening. And can you cite a specific example which would support that? The chart says 2 minutes. We're going to allow you 3 minutes. You don't have to take it, but you got it if you need it. So I think it's up to you, Jason.
I'm starting? Okay. Future involvement if I'm not elected. I'm always going to be involved somehow. I've been involved in the community almost since we moved into town. It's, as I said earlier, I like this stuff. It's fun. The fact that we have the opportunity to do it is a privilege, and I like to set the example for my kids. And I was involved in Cub Scouts. I like doing this kind of thing. So I would definitely be involved either on a subcommittee or if the Article 3 fails, I'm sure they're going to want some sort of community involvement in a plan on what to do next. I'd certainly be more than willing to volunteer for that. If Article 9 passes, they're going to need to have some sort of subcommittee. I'd gladly be serving on that as well. Discharging the duties. It's something that I did when I was on the town council. It's something that I did when I was on the budget committee. It's something I take fairly seriously as a person. Despite what you may have heard from me in public input and editorials and all that, there's a difference between me standing out there in the crowd and me sitting up here on the board. There's a clear demarcation point between Jay Hyde in public input and Jay Hyde sitting on a board. And if you've ever seen me in the other board meetings, you will have seen the difference. You're held to different standards, and I take those standards very seriously. I am very much an independent type of fellow. I'm a minimal government type of fellow. The more freedom for the most amount of people, the most amount of time, for the least amount of cost. And that includes in education. I have a different approach to it. I think, based on my experience out in the workplace, I don't think our kids need to learn how to use an iPad when they're 3. I think they need to learn how to write when they're 3. See what I'm saying? There's a difference there. I work with people every day who can't type a cogent email, but they can use the iPad because they have to. They can push a button on an iPad, that's great, but they can't communicate to me in an email. That's important. I think we need people who know how to read, write, etc. The technology comes later. It's important, but it's not the be-all and end-all. So I will happily serve in any capacity I can, and I'll enjoy it, and I know I'll do a good job for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Jason, you were just a bit over 2 minutes. I'm going to reconsider. Let's go back to the 2-minute thing.
Sorry, everybody.
But you set the tone, Jason. The logic was, I think the logic was good, but so we'll just stick with 2 minutes and let it ride. Sorry about that. Trish? No, we're going the other way. Jim?
Sorry.
Don, I think your comments were just over 2 minutes too. But
With that,
I deserve that.
I'm sorry. I will continue to serve, and I will continue to serve on the other boards I currently serve. There's another meeting I have to attend tomorrow, and another meeting next week, and another meeting the following. I have fun. And what you see is what you get with me. You may not always agree with me, but you may come around to like me eventually, if you don't like me already. But with that, I will continue to do what I have for 25 years. I had a good grandmother who taught me well, who taught in Hooksett for 45 years, which is almost as long as Joanne was on the school board, but that's another story. Quickly, next week, the citizens of Hooksett will be deciding on one of the most important issues we faced in generations. No one has a crystal ball, and we can't predict what the result will be, but it will be the board's responsibility to fulfill those wishes. Change is needed for this board, not because the current board lacks the best intentions, but I think it's due to their inexperience, the inability to work together in a constructive and effective manner, and the failure to follow rules. The past year, as we know, has been tenuous. There's been good moments, and there's been some bad moments. Hooksett needs school boards, members who can bring experience, stability, and teamwork back to the town. I again offer my services back to the board after being on for 12 years, and I can believe we can do better collectively. I will bring my 25 years of service to the town as a counselor.
5 seconds, Jim.
In all of my, that was 2 minutes already? No, I shouldn't have started with jokes. Sorry. 1 sentence. A change is needed, and I can hope I can bring experience, stability, and a sense of teamwork back to the school board, and I will work for you.
Thank you. Okay, Mike.
All right, my future involvements, I would look, if asked, or depending on what committees are out there, I would look to volunteer to be part of committees. I will continue to coach within the HYA program. Obviously still have kids playing sports, at least one son now still playing sports, and continue to be active on the HYA boards. I guess constituents can trust that I'll follow through with what I've said. I spoke about earlier, code of ethics. Honesty, trust, fairness, and integrity. Those are 4 things that I pride myself on. I do what I say, and I think I have a team player in my job. I have to work with lots of different people. We all work, same focus here for the board should be education. I think if we all stay focused on that, we'll have the outcome that the town needs. I appreciate your vote on March 11th, and see where it goes from here.
Thank you, Mike. Jack.
First of all, thanks everybody for coming out and spending some time getting to know us here. I think it'll help make educated decisions next week. In terms of future involvement, if not elected, I think we're lucky that we have so many good candidates that stepped up this year, and the board is going to be well served. So there will not be any sour grapes or any of that nonsense. It's going to be supporting the board and trying to move forward and helping out any way that I can. How do people know they're going to get the answers, or I'm going to follow through on my answers today? I'm not a professional politician, so I haven't learned how to spin yet. But the answers that I gave are how I feel. I feel very passionately about my opinions, as many know, but they're not closed to alternative suggestions or alternative opinions that can affect those opinions. I think we are always learning, and we always need to have an open mind, and I certainly will. With regards to the vote next week, it is a very important vote, and I would just suggest and just hope that that people are getting past all of the rhetoric and getting past all the emotion out there and understanding what a yes vote means on this warrant Article 3 and what a no vote means, because there's a lot of cloudiness there, and I don't, for one, there's a lot of talk that people are trying to force people to go to Pinkerton. I'm not trying to force anyone to go anywhere. I think you need to look at the realities of the situation that we're in. If there were other schools other than Pinkerton that could house all of our kids, we would have other options. I personally think Pinkerton is a fantastic school, but I'm not trying to force anyone to go there, and I don't think anyone who supports the Pinkerton contract is trying to either. So I would just suggest you, and I'm sure you have already, sort of sift through all the noise and get to the facts, and make your decision that way. And I think win or lose, we'll gather together and we'll rally as a town, and we'll continue doing what's best for the kids.
Thank you. Amy.
I'm currently on the Hooksett High School Assessment Committee and have enjoyed it immensely. So I would hope to plan on continuing in that role. As far as my responsibilities, I really see the Hooksett School Board, it's policymakers, it's the vision, the goal, it's holding the district accountable. My work ethic, my personality, things just get done around me. I don't know how else to say it. I come prepared. I just love the kids in the town, want to see them succeed, and want to give them all the opportunities that they need. I had a chance today to attend the SNHU 7th grade field trip, and there was a magician that did a performance first thing in the morning, and he made a comment that kind of stuck with me today. You can't make good choices if you don't have good information. And his second comment was, a goal without a plan is a dream. And I think both of those comments resonate with me. We have a lot of issues coming up next year, or in the next school board season. You know, not just the high school, but the whole Common Core, our regular K-8 kids. We need a lot of focus. They need a lot of attention. I sincerely hope you get out and vote next week. I think that's the best thing this town could see, if we had great voter turnout.
5 seconds, Amy.
If the voters could tell us what they really want, I think that would be the most important. Again, Amy Bullard, and I appreciate you voting for me next week.
Thank you. Tricia, you get the final say.
My future involvement, if I'm not elected, I currently sit on 7 committees of the Hooksett School Board. I'm the alternate to 2. 2 of the committees I sit on, I approached the chair of the committees and said, if I'm not elected to the school board, could I be a parent representative on the school board? And both of them thought that was a good idea, but said I was being premature, that I was passionate about these 2 committees and I wanted to stay on them. It was technology and professional development. How will your constituents trust that you will discharge your responsibilities? I think they know I will do my very best, because that's what I have done for the last 3 years. I was elected in March of 2011. On November 6th of 2011, my whole world tipped upside down when my husband of 19 and a half years left. And no one would have blamed me if I said I needed to focus on my children, and I chose not to. I have had on my nightstand a poem that says, while you thought I wasn't looking. And it's about how your children see the example you set. And I knew I had to set an example of life goes on and you pick yourself up and you dust yourself off. I have enrolled in college I found a passion. I want to be an educator. I showed my children that's what you do. I've missed 2 meetings in 3 years. One of them was a prearranged vacation before I was elected. The second one was I was at the bottom of a staircase. I had fallen down, and I texted the superintendent and said, I don't think I'm going to make it tonight. Didn't tell him why until the next day. Went to the hospital, didn't break anything. But I keep my commitments. Over the past summer, I left 2 family vacations to represent the Hooksett School Board in court-mandated mediation.
5 seconds, Trish.
I'm there. That's what I can say, that I've done what I said I would do 3 years ago, and I will do the same thing this time if I'm elected, and I hope I have some of your support.
Thank you. Okay. I'd just like to see a big round of applause for all 10. I said a few minutes ago or a few hours ago that this is not easy for the candidates, under no circumstance, because we don't share the questions with them ahead of time. They don't have a clue what the format is. They're coming into this thing blind, which in a lot of ways is the best way to approach it, because then you get some good thinking, which in my mind is more important than the specific answers. So I think they did a good job. Generally, was the format workable? Did you learn stuff tonight?
Did anyone win bingo?
Nobody won bingo. Thank you all for coming. and thank the library and library trustees again for the work they did. Now, Mary has some additional comments. She's going to run it right to 9 o'clock because that's the schedule.
I also want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank the candidates. I want to thank Dawn for doing this again. And this was not easy. There was a point that I was like, I don't want to be a library trustee today. But Dawn and Matt Broderick pulled together the format and the questions to make this thing work. We couldn't figure out putting 11 of you up there giving you all the same question. I think the format worked very nicely, and I'm glad that you all think it did too. I didn't see anybody falling asleep out there, which I thought was great. I'd like to thank the library staff for also working to pull this together, from setting up the room to doing the projection. For Heather, just running it up and down. And speaking of Heather, in case you don't know, she is the Kiwanis Municipal Employee of the Year. And there will be an award ceremony in April. And in the immortal words of Matt Broderick, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So again, thank you all for coming. And we may be doing this again for town council, so I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.